Hi everybody, welcome to another Talk Photography, and tonight it's with me, which is a bit weird because I usually do the interviews and everything else with it and things, but we had so many requests through for Speedlite that we're obviously kind of doing it ourselves and things really, and I'm going to try and show you 8 images, trying to show you technique and try and show you some equipment to do with it. And I've kind of chose some of the images that you can kind of go and watch on the Academy for free as well. So you should be able to actually watch some of this training film as well. So Speedlite photography is obviously on-camera flash, or that on-camera flash is taken off, and that's what we're going to be using. But Speedlite is the common name for a portable flash in the world of photography. So if you wonder what Speedlite was, then that's basically what it is. We're going to be talking about some equipment in a minute, but realistically, what we're trying to do on location or even in studio spaces where we don't have professional studio flash is we're trying to create light, shape light, color light, control light. And there's so many different ways to do it and so much different kit. I'm not here to sell you kit, okay? I can advise you on what I use. I can advise you on how to use that kit that I use, but basically I'm not a tech wizard. I'm just a user of equipment that I have. When I'm buying new equipment, I kind of really look into it in a little bit more depth, but at the heart of what I do, most of Speedlite photography is going to be communication, and that's really what Speedlite in the early days was very bad at, and now it's become very good. And that's because of wireless built into the majority of flashes. Whereas once upon a time, Speedlite relied on seeing light from another Speedlite or seeing communication of infrared from another Speedlite or camera to trigger it, okay? But today, pretty much, it's affordable to buy wireless flash, which we'll talk about now in a minute. Now, the first things first, if we've only got one Speedlite, what are we going to be doing with it? If we've got 2 Speedlights, what are we going to be doing with it? And then so on. So I thought, even though this is quite a dramatic image, we're going to end up with this session shot at the Café de Paris at a pre-conference workshop. But we're going to end up with this shoot and basically talk you through the different kind of varieties. And it should actually end up, because we're going to use a lot of the techniques leading up to the shoot at the end. So you should actually understand it a little bit more. So Speedlite, what do I use? Well, I'm still a Canon photographer, a Canon shooter. I've never been sponsored. I was only just saying this to Debbie. What a shame we've never been sponsored by a camera company in our lives, yeah? Anyway, I shoot Canon. And one of the reasons, if you don't know, that I shoot Canon was in around about 2004, something like that. Canon brought out the 5D. And that was a full frame sensor. Up until that point, Nikon was what I was using, but they brought the full frame sensor in and they brought out a much higher ISO. So it meant that I could basically move completely to shooting digitally full stop, weddings and so on with it. So as far as why I'm Canon today is because Nikon at the time said we are not going to be developing a full frame sensor camera in the near future. Well, of course, I want the full use of my lenses and things really. So I actually made that big jump, sold all my lenses. I gave all my Speedlights and a few of my primes to my assistant at the time, Claire, and she loved me forever. But basically, I moved over to Canon and I had to kind of buy everything that I was going to. So the kind of the most expensive, the newest technology is usually the most expensive. I fell on, just by pure coincidence, on to a third-party Speedlite called Yongnu, and this is going back, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years ago. I was doing a lot of Speedlite workshops, and basically I was burning through flashes that were Canons, and it was costing me a lot of money. In fact, we would lose probably at least one Speedlite or burn one out on every workshop that I was doing, and they'd have to go away for repair. And I had at any stage probably 10 kind of Speedlights in use. That's a lot of money. And then, of course, when the new technology comes in, you're looking at easier ways to use the kit you have to make it fire and so on with it. Anyway, The current model that I'm using are the Yongnuo flashes like you're seeing on the left hand side, and you can see that it almost looks identical to the Canon 600 Speedlite as well. Okay, almost identical in every way, and I've yet to actually see the difference. I've tested both the 600 Yongnuo side by side on the Canon 600, and basically I've not had any differences in output or flash fire and so on with it. But that's just my personal thing. All right. If you're going to invest into Speedlite in the beginning, I would say start off with a third-party flash, and if you're a Canon photographer, you can obviously opt for the Yongnuo. I'm not sure if they make them for Nikons or Sonys or whatever it would be. You'll have to do your research on that, okay? But it's the flashes on the left-hand side that I'm recommended. I would say if you're going to get serious about your Speedlite photography, so in other words, you want to be more portable, I would definitely pick a system that you can afford to, say, buy 3 lights within 12 months. And the reason being in that is that you want to really use one for the key, you want to use one for shaping, and you want to use one for coloring or light and a background and so on with it, yeah? And what I would also say is probably invest into a controller. So what we're looking at here is 3 identical flashes. All of them can be used in both a wireless mode and an infrared mode. So if I had the older version of Yongnuos, which I do as well, and I have Canon infrared LED flashes, which I do, I can set them into that setting. So instead of being wireless where they can see themselves around a corner, I could refer to them back to with all my other flashes and use them so they've got to see each other's infrared. But of course, you know, over the years, I've built up lots and lots of kit, and we want to be able to use as much as we can together. If you were saying, how many Speedlights do you travel with today, Mark? I travel with 5, okay? I'm not saying that's what you've got to do. It's a big investment. However, there's also different manufacturers out there like Godox, loads of different things that you can kind of invest into. All right, I'm going to stop about kit now. We'll touch on kit at the end again. All right, the controller sits on the camera, and what that does, it doesn't obviously have a flash in it, but it's got all the technology that all the flashes have, and basically it's being used to tell each one of those flashes what to do in groups or kind of ratios and so on with it. One of the equipment that I've definitely got to have is a cold shoe adapter to go onto a stand. And this is all 3 of these, as you can see, or basically all showing that they've got a hole for an umbrella or the likes of. In hindsight, I've used the Manfrotto ones in the past year, and I would basically encourage you to buy better than the ones that were Lastalite originally, or the likes of a cheap third party, and that's just because of the lock-in mechanism, and that's what Manfrotto make, is great stands and great stand accessories. So if you can afford the extra, I would invest into something with a little bit more solidity. But if you can go into the camera shops like, you know, Flash Center, go for a visit, and basically they usually got some of this kind of kit around, or kind of get in touch and see if they can get it in for you to have a look at when you're there and things really. And then if you're getting going, I would definitely say, if you've got an umbrella, make sure your umbrella goes through the shaft of the cold shoe adapter. That's absolutely key, because some brollies won't go through. They're too thick in the stem to go through the actual hole. Most of the new-ish adapters that we just saw pretty much have an adjustable brolly here, so it's much bigger, and then it's just tightened with the actual screw, whereas years ago they were set sizes and so on. But yeah, I would encourage you to take out with you a shoot through umbrella. That's the one where it's kind of translucent, and if you point the flash at it, it won't just bounce light back, it will actually shoot flash through. And then I would definitely have a reflective umbrella that you would take out as a part of a kit, because that is the way that we can use most of the energy of the flash and so on with it. And remember, even though I was showing you the likes of a cold shoe here with one head, you can actually buy these with multiple heads on the top, so you can stack your flashes together and so on with it. Last couple of things before we get into photographs. One would be, I'm absolutely still love my Honnold grids. They basically work on a strap-on Velcro strap around the head of the actual Speedlite, and then they just have Velcro tabs that they kind of click on to. It does make them a little bit wobbly, and that's a little bit difficult at times with a grid, so you need to make sure it's tight. But it's a little bit wobbly, but they're very small and very light, and it makes it very easy for me to travel with. So I technically travel with a camera bag and a Speedlite bag, and that's basically me done then. The Honnold snoot here on the right-hand side is a great accessory as well. Some of you might remember many moons ago in the beginning of Photo Training for You, we bought a whole stack of them. That if you joined Photo Training for You, you actually got a Speedlite strap and a Honnold funnel was it, and I hope you all had fun with those and things really. As far as then a softbox is concerned, yes, we'll talk about these a little bit more at the end, but the Manfrotto, the Joe McNally range, which has this recessed hood, I know it's a little bit more expensive than their normal one, which is the flat screen. What I mean by the flat screen, it's a diffuser on the front. What the Joe McNally design does, it basically acts as a controller, so it allows the Speedlite to be a little bit more efficient, and it doesn't just kind of fall off the sides and things really. And as you can see on the strap on the back here, this literally tightens onto your Speedlite, so it kind of fits anything, to be honest. As long as it has a rectangle aperture, it's going to fit. So the first image of the night, this is obviously a ballerina image. This image is shot with one light, and this is an umbrella in the sky. So the benefit of this, it pretty much allows you to work anywhere. And even if I was working on location in a lightish area, by using the high-speed sync, yes, I can actually use much faster shutter speeds to kind of darken or blacken the background. Now, this is shot in studio, okay? But literally, we could work very similar on location with a white wall about 10 feet behind her, if instead of the Speedlite in the sky on a boom arm, and instead of being an umbrella, if we had a softbox pointing directly at her. The reason being is that obviously if you make a very big light source like an umbrella, doesn't matter how small the umbrella is, it's a big light source. What flash is always trying to do, whether it's studio flash or Speedlite flash, it's just trying to explode. Yeah, the Xenon gas in Speedlite just wants to go bang, and it wants to scatter as far and wide as it can. And as it scatters, we lose the amount of the flash, of course, yes? So where the closer the flash is to the subject, or the more controlled the flash is being onto the subject, the more energy efficient that we are. So you can do pretty much this image anywhere if you'd had a little bit more of a control of the lighting things ready. So I just managed to find a few photographs where you could just see above here where I've swapped from an umbrella to a softbox, and that softbox has those little grids. But you can also see that this is a a black paper backdrop, because you can see how much the light spills, because between the girl's legs here, you can just see the fold of the black paper, and you can see that is being lit from the softbox or the umbrella from above, okay, on the right-hand image. So control in the light is absolutely key, even though there's going to be a fall off of light at around about a stop every step. I kind of teach, if you think about a very short pace, a very short step, that basically equates to around about a stop in loss of light. So if something is a foot away from the subject, and the light is, in other words, is a foot away, let's say we get f22. If we move it then to about 2.5 feet away, then we're going to lose that full stop straight away, and then we'll lose another stop and another stop. And you'll soon get used to how close your speed lights need to be to your subject for you to get pretty much a near accurate image and spread of light, which is key, right out of the bag. Obviously, when we move the speed light or the flash away from the subject, the more we can control it, the energy coming out of the flash is going to be more efficient for us, but it also is going to control the spillage of the light and things. So when we're looking for dramatic light, I'm always looking for light from behind the 9 to the 3 o'clock, or I'm looking for it very high in the sky, or perhaps very low in the shot. So in this case, we've got a light at the 1 o'clock high, so that is just behind the subject and very high up, and that's where you can see the panda eyes. So if we just raised her chin about another inch more and she looked upwards, all of those sockets of the eyes would actually be illuminated, in fact. But for this style of photograph that we were doing, we were looking for more a staged, dramatic kind of style of image. So this kind of photograph can be achieved with both an umbrella and with a softbox. A quick tip when you're using an umbrella, if it's a reflective one, that's the one where it doesn't allow the flash to pass through. It's kind of bouncing and then coming back. If that's the only lighting accessory that you've got, don't be afraid to collapse the umbrella so it almost kind of just fits around the speed light. Now, as long as your speed light is a wireless speed light, it's going to receive the signal to fire, and then it's going to bounce in this very small space of umbrella, and then come out around the speed light. Very, very small light source, and that's a great way to actually, instead of just working with a very, very big softbox, you can work umbrella, you can work with a much smaller one. And if you just put some little gum or tape on the actual shaft, you can actually stop the shaft from collapsing fully, and you can actually just change the way that the size of the softbox is. Gaffer tapes are usually a good idea. It's easier to get off in a rush. So that will give you some kind of idea. If you're not using a wireless speed light communication, in other words, we're using infrared, then make sure that the front of the speed light, yes, faces towards where the other speed light is, so it can see the signal. Don't point it into the umbrella, because obviously when you collapse the umbrella around it, it would be invisible. It's not going to see it. So that would technically be like trying to bounce light around a corner. It's not going to work. So turn the speed light front to face the other flash, and then turn the head of the speed light towards the actual umbrella itself and things, really. But that's a technique I use quite a lot, and it's well worth one to actually think about and keep it up here for another job. Speedlight can create some absolutely beautiful images. This is, I think it's Amber, and we shot her at the on the Manfrotto stage at the photography show years and years ago. This is just about a year after the McNally design of Speedlite softbox had come out, and the grids had been released as well. Up until that point, we only really had a flat surface, and basically I was just on stage to actually kind of demonstrating things, really. In fact, I think Joe was there doing some sessions as well. But for me, if you're a portrait photographer and you want to keep it simple, then speedlight photography can really work well. If you're trying to shoot like hundreds of images in an hour, your poor old flashes are going to get a battering, and they're not going to be your friend for long. They're going to really say, I'm out of here. In other words, they're going to overheat, or they're going to actually pop their flash and so on with it. So remember, with speedlight photography, slower is much better. And if you can afford a third-party battery as an external battery to plug in, then that can really allow the batteries that are in the flash, they're only being used for the actual technology of the flash. If you want to use an external battery, that's being used to power the physical flash itself with it. So with this image here, these images here, we're in a simple setup. Okay, so we've got a Elastilite by Manfrotto, now called Manfrotto, old mastery kind of grey background. I've got 3 Speedlights, yeah, in operation. I've got a Easybox Pro with a grid in the top. That's actually being used as the backlight. Then I've got 2 of these little softboxes, the Easyboxes, as my kind of key light and separation light. Okay, so we'll talk about these in a minute. But that's the setup that we're doing. You might also see just on the stands here, there's external batteries that are clipped onto the stand, which are used to actually power. So if you ever see any of my videos where you're seeing like a coil cord coming out of a Speedlite, that's because it's going to an external battery. Right, let's go back to those images. So here, the image on the left-hand side, we're looking at one light, okay? We've got the light itself, it's pretty much in a butterfly position, so it's not far above camera, it's pointing down towards her, gives us this lovely kind of shadow below the chin. We've got great illumination throughout. We've got a great catch light within the eye as well, and it's very clean. But that small little softbox is only around about 10 to 11 inches wide, and that is doing all of the light for the image on the left-hand side. The image on the right-hand side is exactly the same, except we're shielding the background more because we've moved the light from almost above the camera position just to the left-hand side, so kind of closer to the 7 o'clock to the 8 o'clock position. Hence, you can see we've got increased shadowing on the right-hand side and less shadow on the left. Obviously, this is where it's being lit from. If we look in the catch light, we can see that there. But the height is very similar. So this is still a one light shot, both left and right, except the one on the left is direct at subject, and then the one on the right hand side is more at the 7 to the 8 o'clock position. The image in the middle, we're using the 3 lights combined. We're looking at one to add light to the background. We're using the light in the sky, the big box, to separate the hair and the shoulders away from the subject. And that light is being controlled in spillage because we've got the grids, the egg crates actually on the front. And it's a really pleasing image, and I would say for the majority of you, and why I was looking for these kind of demonstration images, because I love when we do a workshop or we demonstrate, when you see it come up on a screen straight away and you go, right, that's the image, that's the kind of thing that I want. You can see and how to mimic, and you can see there is no black art in anything I do. It's just good solid technique, and it's guaranteeing results time and time again and things really. So with that same setup and position and space, then we can start to actually look at, okay, what else can we do in a similar scene, but kind of add the variety. So now we've put amber directly on the background, and we've got that light above camera position, yes, in that beauty kind of look. And that's how it's coming down. Remember, we're talking about a very small light source here. So the transition from highlight down to shadow is quite fast. Depends on kind of if it's pointing at her or it's pointing down, where you're using more feathering of the light and so on. So let's talk about the image on the left, where basically it is just flat lighting as such. It's pointing directly to her. You can see from the shadow below the sides of the arms, and you can see from that little bit of shadow behind the hair on the left hand side, you can work out the angle of the light just from the shadows in an image, and I'll always encourage you to do that. The next image then in the middle, you can see that we've now moved her away from the background, just around about 2 feet. And by doing that, we can basically control the light that is going to be placed onto the background isn't going to spill onto her. Or we can actually allow some of the light to light the hair and the background. You can see how the red is being used in 2 ways here, instead of just allowing the gelled light to light the hair and the back of the shoulders. We're getting one light trying to do 2. So in other words, it's got to not be controlled by grids. It's got to actually have the flat surface on the front or no diffusion to allow the flash to actually spread and things. Because we've turned the head into the kind of the near 9 o'clock position here, we obviously need to keep drama. So the drama of the light is coming now from behind. Remember the clock and the compass? So the light is coming in from the 10 or 11 o'clock position here to light her and things really. And then overall, there'll be a light that will just allow itself to just spill as well onto the scene. Or we might just put a little bit of the red gel on half of the flash, so we only get half of the speedlight itself, half of the light coming out, which is going to be colored light. And then the image on the right hand side, you can see, is just a beautiful image with just the one light. Again, that's just the Easybox Pro with the without the grids on, allowing it to spill onto the grey background as well. But a very kind of dramatic, simple, classic portrait that pretty much anybody can nail. And because the background has a natural highlight in the way it's painted in the middle, that's why we've got definition and separation. Okay, so let's stay with amber and this kind of demonstration, because one of the techniques I shoot a lot is with CTO gel. Now, a CTO gel is taped onto the front of the flash. In this case, you can see we're using the Honel strap, and then the gel is put onto the front. And then by doing this, we're coloring our flash to tungsten. So CTO is color temperature orange. Orange is the tungsten color. They also in the filter packs you'll be able to buy, they do half CTO, a quarter CTO, and obviously if you add more than one to it, you're building them up. But whatever you're doing, if you're going to shoot with more than a full color temperature orange gel, make sure you shoot a gray card to be able to actually correct the color in the post-production. So the first thing in technique I usually show you is when we're photographing, so when I'm photographing with a CTO gel on the flesh, that is the working color, we presume. So I need to either set my color temperature on camera to the tungsten mode, but what I prefer to do is actually set it into a custom color. I shoot a gray card like you see on the bottom right hand side here, and then I tell the camera to use this as a reference to the new gray. So that's what we're doing. So when we use the Speedlite with CTO and we don't color correct, you see in the image in the top right hand side, when we're adding the actual CTO onto the flash and we then correct it, we end up with this lovely kind of midnight blue in anything that is not touched with a color temperature orange, in other words, a tungsten light, but it's actually being touched by daylight, so light coming through a window, speedlight or flashes that hasn't been gelled. So this is not a blue gel. This is a CTO gel on the face, on the flesh, yes? And the other flashes are white light. And the opposite to the orange, of course, is going to be the blue. So this is how we get the midnight kind of color in as we're going through it. So watch out with this. But when you buy filter kits, the first thing would be I would suggest is color temperature or color correction, they call them, before anything else. Years ago, you could request a Roscoe sample pack, and it was just big enough to go on the front of a Speedlite. And they were free. They'd send them out in the post, and we used to use sellotape to actually sellotape them on, or whatever it would be. They're just big enough for the Speedlite. And then Roscoe realized that we were all doing this, and they began to charge for the sample pack then and things. That was a real shame. But yeah, you know, these kind of things. Hon will also do a roll. So if you've ever seen me working with gels, you'll know that kind of it's all rolled up together, and we just kind of pull out the colors that we need to work with. Okay, on location. So in some ways, we've already seen location flash, because the demonstration images that we just sort of amber were obviously shot at an event. So we're technically on location, we're controlling the ambient light. This is the same when we're working on a location here. In fact, I chose these images of Rio because this is the very first shoot we did with the Yongnuo flashes. I wanted to test them to see if they were stable enough for me to continue on. So we just bought a couple of them, and we wanted to see what they were going to be doing for us and how easy it was to control. And they were the new wireless transmitter kind of flashes as well, and things really. So this is the kind of the real image, and obviously you can see there's a light going on to the subject. We've also got a smoke pellet, a light in the background, and we're using the umbrella because it absolutely began to hammer down with rain. One of the great things about Speedlite is if you carry a load of clear plastic bags, if the weather does change or you're working in a dampish area like in a wood, then I would basically just pop a plastic bag over the top of it, as long as it's not going to get too much condensation, and as long as the bag won't stick to the front of the Speedlite. Because remember, as the gas explodes, it gets very hot. So anything that is touching the front of the plastic, if the front of the flash, if it's repetitively done and it generates a huge heat, it will actually stick to the actual front of the Speedlite with it. And I know because I've basically done it with a blue gel, and I basically had a blue flash forevermore because I couldn't clean the front of it. We even tried adding a little bit of CTO onto the front to do the opposite. It never works. Anyway, so when we're working in location, we need to make sure it's safe wind-wise. One of the problems you've got with little stands and little flashes, there's no weight. So it's usually the camera bags themselves or jackets that are being used to actually keep the flashes still. But this is a great way for us to be able to kind of move the flashes around, just see if they're speaking to each other. So there's a flash behind her, and there's a flash obviously in the main light source. You can see here we've colored the light behind her now, and I'm basically breathing on the lens, and the fog as well is kind of really mixing it all up. But the difference, you know, you don't have to color the gel behind. You can always do that in the post-production. And if in doubt, kind of just go with your white light, and then you can think about in the post if you do want to actually kind of color them up and things really. But this is a good one because I was really putting the Yongnuos through their training methods live, as it were. We'd been shooting down with Rio, great model. Haven't worked with her for a while now, but absolutely brilliant. She's still available on all the model sites to actually work with. Rio Love, RYOLOVE, and basically it's a good way to test live. I always like it because, like a workshop, it's going to go wrong. Let's let it go wrong. Let's talk about it. Let's talk it through. And often these are problems to be kind of solved. However, before we move on to the next image, what I would say, there is so much technology in these Speedlites. Sit on your sofa at home, fingers crossed your partner or the kids are not around, all right? But just get used to how you change the menus with it. Make a few little notes on your phone, or a kind of bit of a credit card shape where you can kind of just do a quick flick and go, to do this style of photography, I need to do this setting on the camera, because then at least you're not having to kind of sift through a manual on your phone or whatever it would be and things really. But again, have a little play and get to know your equipment at home before you actually go out on location. Very frustrating for models and for clients if you don't know your kit. So this is probably one of my favorite techniques, is overpowering the ambient. It always helps when you've got more of a moodier sky, a more dramatic sky. And thank goodness we had just that little bit of clouds with that little bit of break in the blue here on the left-hand side. And so basically, we're going to get some kind of great image. You can see from the balustrade in front that we're controlling the flash very, very small. In fact, we have allowed the flash to spill a little bit, and I'll show you why now in a second. But it would be very easy for us to have made these balustrade, these three here, go perfectly black. In fact, I lightened them so they had a little bit of detail, but you could have had a silhouette here without any trouble. The technique for this image is take an ambient reading first, and then, as long as you can get the flash close to the subject, change the flash into high speed sync, so you can use shutter speeds above, say, 200th of a second. And then you can basically overpower the scene by around about a stop to 2 stops. What do I mean by that? If the ambient reading in the scene was, say, f8 at 100th of a second, yes, you want to shoot either with a with more power flash to overpower. So in other words, if it's I forgot what I just suggested. If it was 5.6 in the ambient light, yes, and we wanted to get the overpowering effect without using the shutter speed to do the job, we'd have to increase the power or get the flash closer to the subject by 1 to 2 stops. So in other words, it would then have to get close to him, and we'd have to have a minimum of f8, if not f11. Change the aperture on camera, of course. Then what we've done is naturally made the scene darker no matter what. Why we use high speed sync with Speedlite? A, the facility is there, so use it. But B, it means that we can still have real shallow depth of fields, and we can basically control the ambient light with the shutter speed. So in other words, once we have the ambient light, let's say the 100th of 5.6, then really every stop of shutter speed we put up. So remember, you usually go up in thirds of a stop in shutter speed. So we want to go 3 clicks, as it were, then to 6 clicks to get the more dramatic. So I know that we can do some of this work in the likes of post-production, but where possible, do it in camera, because you will absolutely get so excited with yourself that you want to shoot this time and time again. So this image here, for example, we've got one Speedlite, as you can see here, on a stand. It's got a grid on the front to control the light spillage. In the hand of the assistant is a battery. We're using a light stand instead of a boom arm because they're more efficient for us when we're working on location. The reason being is that when we get tired, we can just stand it down and we can move on to something else. So we can fiddle with the technology of the flash or the batteries or whatever it would be. Whereas when you've got a boom arm, you know, just by itself, you're holding a boom arm, basically there's nowhere to put it down safely without kind of doing that. So that's how this image kind of comes together. And pretty much it's straight out of camera, I promise you. And that's really what you want to deliver, is that overpowering the ambient by a minimum of 1 full stop, if not 2. This is a quick commercial technique with 2 lights, and it's being done in either of ways. So in other words, I can either blue gel everybody. Now, because it's such a big auditorium and we've got so many people in the shot, it's easier for me to light all of them with white light, okay? Because if I put a gel onto the light that you can just see in the top left-hand side here, the big bright light, if I put a gel on there, that's going to lose a good stop, if not more, straight away. And the one thing you really can't afford to do with small flashes, is lose their power, because they're working hard for you anyway. So in other words, the light that is going to be closer to the subject is the one that we gel. And you can see here, we've actually just got a gel over the front that is pointing down to her. And that's how we get this image. So that's another use of the CTO. However, we could change her in any color. If we want her flesh, all we've got to do is shoot a gray card and tell it that try and match it to this. If you put a red gel on and you try and match a gray card to gray and it's lit with red, it ain't going to work, okay? It's just not going to get it. Tones of light red, then that's fine. Obviously blues and greens is temperature anyway, so you can kind of control the ambient light in the background by just actually changing the front color of the gel. Simple one light is really, I would say, what you all need to master no matter what, and being able to get it off camera as soon as you can. So the only reason I chose this image, in fact, is you're seeing a Coiled K cable. Now, I've already said that that Coiled K cable is going to an external battery to power the flash. However, if your flash technology or your flash won't allow it, or your budget won't allow you to buy another Speedlite yet, you can buy yourself a sync cable. So basically a long cable with a hot shoe that goes on the top of the camera hot shoe, and the other end of the cable has full hot shoe capabilities, and that goes onto the bottom of the Speedlite. And that's really what I'm trying to show with this image. And I just didn't have an image that I could kind of just show you that technique, but it will work. I still carry to this day in the Speedlite bag Coiled K cables, just in case we've got issues in whatever way. You know, I've got to be prepared for the worst case scenario with it. So in this case, even though we're seeing a grid, and we've seen a grid with CTO, realistically, the key thing for this image is getting the flash off camera in exactly the same way as this image. It's exactly the same technique. All we need to do is get it off the camera, because otherwise what we would do is light fully the front of the body. The more controlled the light spread, the more dramatic the image. However, because you can't see the illumination from the Speedlite compared to like a studio flash with a modeling bulb, basically it's hit and miss. So you've got to kind of think about the line of sight, and you just say, you know, to your subject, oh, you know, the white on the front of the Speedlite here, can you see it? Does it look like it's pointing at you directly? And if they say yes, take the shot and don't move. All right. So that's one of the things that we really need to make sure. We're either going to have a light on a stand, or we've got an assistant that is being controlling of that light. Thought we'd use the Café de Paris workshop that I did, and thanks to the societies for kind of putting this on. And we had a great group of photographers from all around the world. In fact, pre-convention, we spent the day in the Café de Paris. And even though the societies, they supplied me with a model, I booked my own as well. Never shot with this girl before. But basically, I always, when I'm doing a workshop and somebody's supplying a model, if I can, I'll basically make sure I've got a backup. If I've got no sight of the girl, I'll lose some of my budget, you know, that I'm being paid to make sure that you as photographers are coming away with amazing images, because it's just not me photographing and you going ooh, ah, and everything else. I want you to come away with great images as well with it and things. So this image is quite simple in its structure in the 3-light setup. We've basically got 2 separation lights, one at 10, one at 2, and we've got the frontal light as well coming onto her. let's see the setup. So you can see here, we've got the light on the right-hand side. We've got the light on the left-hand side. The left-hand side, we class this as 10 o'clock position. And the light on the right-hand side, we class that as being in the 2 o'clock position. And their job is to add the lovely kind of edge lighting coming down the model. And then the light, which you can't see, I look for the BTS shot, behind the scenes shot, but I couldn't see it there. But then basically the light behind camera or by camera is the one that's giving us the full illumination to her and things really. So with the model stood on X, she can't flip in move, right? She can move spin aroundy, but she can't move backwards. She can't move forwards as such. And the reason being on that, those side lights, those separation lights are basically designed to hit one sweet spot. And that's what we've got to do with it. If she moves out of the sweet spot, it will change the lighting. Now, as far as the key light's concerned, on camera, that's probably set on TTL, so that would adjust if she walked towards me, she walked further away. But as far as the separation lights on the side are concerned, those are really in a manual mode, and they are set in a power to guarantee the power every single time, because I don't want to burn it out of flesh or whatever it is. I mean, we've got some flash coming off the thigh here. We've got flash coming off the bottom as well. We don't want to burn any detail out at all. It needs to be controlled. And remember the equation, the light from behind will appear twice as bright as it reflects. So it means that you need to stop it down by at least one stop. Otherwise, it will naturally burn out no matter what with it and things. So this kind of imagery, I kind of like, because I know that a photographer who's got 3 lights and basically has got some simple accessories by controlling the working shutter speed. So in other words, the shutter speed in this shot is being controlled because I wanted to bring up the ambient of the Café de Paris. That is where the exposure is really from. So it's not going to work in a very high shutter speed, otherwise that's going to go black. But what we wanted to achieve was this lovely kind of detailing that we've got with a name behind and things. So by doing that, our shutter speed is set based on that. Then we're actually setting the flashes to get the image that we need. In exactly the same location, it's literally, this is about 10 feet to the left of what we just saw. And this girl who had never photographed before, and I kind of booked, I couldn't have been more pleased with her, to be honest. She was absolutely brilliant. This is straight out of camera image. There's no retouching going on, as you can see. There's no advancement of color. There's no kind of fixes in from raw, whatever it would be. It's absolutely directly out of camera. So we've got lights that are adding some gel onto the arms and separation. And then we've got the white light actually coming on towards her. Then, of course, if we add the gels on, everything else that is a white light is then going to appear blue, remember? And that's how we've got all this more blue within the image. And that by having the more blue within the image, I think it gives us that more nighttime-y kind of look and everything else. So all the other Speedlite are white light. It's actually the light going on to her. That technique I was on about you before is CTO, and that is what the color balance is set to. So a really kind of a simple way to kind of really get some great images. This is one Speedlite on camera, okay? It can be achieved by just zooming the flash. If you've been using your Speedlite and if you're using it with a zoom lens, as you kind of zoom the lens, you'll hear the Speedlite make a noise, and that's the mechanism in the head itself magnifying the flash. So it thinks, oh, he's just gone from 24 mil to 105. So that means I don't want to waste the energy in the wide angle here. What I'm going to do is kind of focus it in on the narrower angle. So the Speedlite itself is doing a job for us. So if we're using wide angle like we're here, but then we actually zoom the flash in, and you can see something's going on because of the shape, or we might be using a ring flash in a similar way. But by zooming the flash down to begin with, the bare head, or zooming the flash to think I'm using a long lens, it will control the lighting down more. So in fact, if you saw this full image, it actually has a lot of space around it. And basically we're just cropped into the middle because that's what we zoom to naturally add a vignette as a part of the course. And then we were looking at using gel as the background light, and then kind of getting this lovely saturation of color. No CTO going on here. This is pure gel color, and solid color is different to color temperature correction, because we're adding in more and more of the blue and things. But here, the kind of the fleshiness, we just kind of had a bottle of perfume with us and things, or we asked, in fact, the model to bring her favorite perfume with her, like we would do to a client in boudoir. So we can shoot like an ad. And this is a reflective metal wall with a reflective metal door. And that can cause real problems if you're working in TTL mode, because as soon as the camera sees the technology, the camera sees the flash go off, it'll basically start to switch it off, because it thinks it's already got enough light. So when there's times to use automatic flash and there's times to use manual flash. And the great thing about Speedlite is that you can set different flashes to work in different ways. I believe, was it the C group years ago, could only ever be a manual setting. It wasn't allowed to be an auto setting in any way, or TTL. If you see ETTL, that's just the Canon equivalent of TTL. Remember, TTL means through the lens, and that is a metering kind of system that it works with. So that's the light coming through. But then if we take the gel off, and this is me breathing on the lens to actually give us this kind of fogginess, and then as it starts to kind of lose the fog, you basically start to get this kind of sharper image amongst the fog. Or you could use a filter on the front of the lens to basically, you know, just a Skylight Filter, and then either off camera, of course, put a 2p piece or a 10p piece, spray it with one layer of lacquer, and then take the big coin off, and then put a smaller coin on, and then do another spray of lacquer, and you've got naturally a vignette going out. If you can carry a spare Skylight in a case by itself, and you take a small little kind of tube of Vaseline, you can actually just, with the top of your finger, just add a little bit of Vaseline to a Skylight Filter, and that will allow the similar kind of fogging. In that case, you've seen me do it on loads of films that we've shot live, where I'm basically holding it in front. You often see me using a piece of clear acetate that has come from a really cheap frame that you can buy in IKEA or whatever it be. But those kind of acetates are great, that you can color, spray, shape, scratch, mark. You know, you can go to town with those things, but that's all about adjusting the actual what's in front of the lens rather than the light itself. So that's our 8 images. I'll do the questions now in a minute, if that's okay. Let's quickly do the kit again and some other kits, just so you're familiar. If you joined us late, basically I use the Yongnuo rather than the Canon Speedlite. It's basically a third-party flash with all the technology of the Canon flash itself, so full wireless and TTL control. And if I had a Canon flash in the 600 series, I could mix them with the Yongnuo. They'll all work together and things with it. And remember that my Yongnuo, in the same way as the Canon, you can put it out of wireless mode into infrared mode, and then basically that will control older models of flashes that you might have as well. And even Yongnuo do a version of the Canon infrared flash as well. The trigger is a kind of an easy way to basically control the flashes. The only negative is that it doesn't tilt up. So if you're working on a tripod, the trigger on the right hand side sits on the camera hot shoe. Basically, it's a bit of a pain in the arse to kind of be able to go in and change the settings. Unlike a speedlight on the back of the camera, you can see it straight at you. But I find that the controller is much easier to work fast with than the actual speedlight itself, but it's not a lot less. So if you're still building up your kit, I'd forget the controller and basically buy another speedlight. That's slightly different if you're buying the Canon flashes, because the controller is much less than one of the speedlights. We talked about the cold shoe and the hot shoe that goes onto lighting stands. You should make sure that they're adjustable, so it basically won't wreck the bottom of the speedlight sensors. You definitely want to control that. Don't be afraid to carry some umbrellas around with you. We talked about the Honnold grids, that the different sizes, in fact, they usually come as a pair. So you can basically have one with a bigger spread of light, one with a smaller spread of light. Then the right-hand side is a Honnold snoot, which can be opened up and used as a bit of a bounce card as well. We talked about the Softboxes with the recess cover, but again, if you've got the budget, buy the grids to go with it and things. I know it's a bit of an investment, but it's all about investing once and forever rather than kind of just doing it cheap to begin with as such. But if you're going to buy one of the soft boxes, like I was on about to you, then I definitely invest into an egg crate to actually go with it. As far as the Easybox Pros, would I recommend those? Well, I suppose the simple answer is yes, but there are cheaper soft boxes on the market now compared to when Lastolite first kind of released all their kit. And Lastolite were at the forefront of speedlight accessories, and Gary, who was one of their chief designers, or the designer, came up with some absolutely amazing kind of designs and ideas for photographers. As a very good photographer himself and a creative photographer, he had an investment into the actual manipulation of light when he worked for Lastolite and things. So the Easybox range was great because it's all fold away and so on with it. But there are some products out there now that are cheaper, and they basically come with grids as well with it and things really. So you know, just have a little look around and see what's around. You'll get them from major suppliers like the Flash Center. Different kind of gel kit holders that I've got and use still. The barn doors, I don't think this is available anymore. Basically, Lastolite or Gary designed this system here so you could magnetically attach a grid to it, and you could magnetically attach the likes of gels through gel holders and so on with it. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is actually, what is the light trying to do? So in other words, when we just want to light a backlight here, we just want light to spread. We don't need any accessory at all. When we want things to have a control of shape, we can make holes in plastic, we can put it in front of the lens, you can kind of practice how far away. If you've got some form of magnification, we used to use old enlarger glass years ago to actually help focus in the effect. You can make your own focus kind of shapes and everything else with it and things. And you can put patterns in there and everything else with it, which look great within the imagery. But it's just down to what is right for you. At the end of the day, what I want to do is control light. I want to control it to spill. I want to control it to shape. I want to control it in color. And the Speedlite then is basically just small flash, and it's portable flash. It's light that you can pretty much carry things around, but the one light should always do one job. And whether you're setting it up in a studio or you're setting it up in location, it's all about kind of generating the quality of light that you need for that shot and things. So think about what you're trying to do with your flash, your Speedlite flash, before you even venture out of the door, because you need to take the right kit and you just don't need to feel like a donkey where you're carrying everything for the sake of it. So thanks for joining me live. Let's do the questions here. Do the young new Speedlights work with Canon ST3 transmitter? I have no idea. Is that the same as the Canon 600 transmitter? If so, yes. Could you explain how the lady in the cinema was lit and everyone else was in shadow? Okay, so if we quickly go back to the image, there we go. So you can see here, the light is the left-hand light, the big bright white light on the left-hand side is what is lighting the cinema audience, yeah? The more this light goes towards the 12 o'clock position, none of these faces are going to be visible. As I've cropped into her here, there is some light spilling onto the sides of these people, as you can see. But what we've got is a separate light, even when she's sat in a seat, and a gridded light to control the light onto her and not spill onto the people to the side. And you can just see that there's a pole here being used. So again, this light onto her is just focused in, it's funneled in, it's zoomed in, it's gridded in, but it's controlled is the key thing with it. Can you fire a Canon Speedlite with a YN trigger? Yes, you can, as long as they are complementary to each other. So in other words, as long as the trigger is either the wireless one, so if you're buying the Yongnuo equivalent one that we just saw, let's go back to it. Here, the YN E3RT radio transmitter, that stands for on the end here. And basically this one can also be set to fire speed lights with infrared, but you can't work both at the same time. All of the RT speed lights that we're seeing here can be set into an infrared mode. So if you've got other flashes that don't have the technology like we're seeing here on the YNs, then you can basically use it in that way. Some of you will be familiar with that. I used to use a Cactus hot shoe adapter underneath any flash, and basically all I had to do was sync the Speedlite, a bit complicated here, yeah, sync the Speedlite with the Cactus module underneath, so it knew what it was. So in other words, the Cactus adapter knew that on top was a Nikon whatever, yeah, and then on another Cactus adapter there was a Canon whatever, and on another Cactus adapter there was a Metz whatever it would be, yeah. So then when they knew what they all were, a controller on camera, even in TTL mode, could control different manufacturer flashes in a TTL way. It just blew my mind. It was the cheapest things on the planet to actually buy as well within these, really. And before we had the real wireless transmitter technology built into the likes of Canon, and basically the Cactus was a simple solution and a simple gun to buy as well with it. Hope that helps. So I've done that one question there. When using a CTO gel, remember CTO stands for color temperature orange, yes? Let me just get the CTO. We got that image? No, we haven't, typical. When we're using the CTO flash, when using a CTO gel on the flash, rather than the custom white balance, could you just set the camera color balance to tungsten to get the same effect you demonstrated with the gray card? The simple answer to that is yes, okay? It's just technique to guarantee color. So, and the benefit of doing it as well is with Canon, you have to physically shoot a gray card. So if you look at the images in the post when you've downloaded them and they're not quite right, you've also got a gray card there that you can reference without any trouble. If you're a Nikon photographer and you do it in the setting to go into the custom balance exposure, it doesn't, or it never used to, take a photograph of the grey card and remember the grey card on the card as a photograph. All it was used for was a custom balance. The Nikons were very, very quick to actually custom balance into custom color balance, whereas the Canon took one more step, and that was physically taking the photograph of the card and saying, use this as custom balance, please. But the simple answer on that is yes. That's us done. Brilliant. Thanks very much for joining us, boys and girls, and some really diehard people I haven't seen on a while in a webinar, so welcome back, and some people that we've never seen before as well, so welcome to you all. Thanks for joining me live. We'll get this back up from members on the website as soon as we can. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time with the great hair photographer, Kai. See you then. Bye-bye.